Hello there, and welcome to the Capture the Castle event. My name is Dave, and I'm a knight that is lucky enough to have survived lots of battles, both attacking and defending many castles. A lot of my fellow knights, who are just as old or even older, if you can imagine, have retired and they're living in comfort on their estates, eating lots and spending blissful days hunting in the forests or just watching tournaments. One of them, Sir Dennis Reed, well, he's taken his retirement to a whole new level and spends all day lazing around in his castle and many a night telling us tales of his bravery and his daring and the amount of enemies he's beaten up lots of times, including the poor Sir Hugo. But my lady Susie, though, well, she wouldn't let me sit still for too long, and she said that I would become lazy just like Sir Dennis. So she kicked me out of the castle to go look for work. So off I went, and eventually I got a job with Historic Environment Scotland's news team, both here as a presenter in the scriptorium and also out and about as a roving reporter using head-breaking investigative journalism. Therefore, I'm lucky enough to be the one to welcome you all to HES News and say a big thanks for joining us today. So, what we got on today? Well, first of all, we're going to be interviewing a knight called Sir Bob about how to defend a castle. Then we're going to meet a very lovely lady called Hannah, who's going to teach us all about how to make our own shields. Then we're going to go back to another knight, the fearsome Sir Fred, and we're going to learn how to attack a castle. Then, as long as we're not too tired from all of that so far, we're going to go and do some intensive training with some of our junior knights. After that, we're going to meet an archer called Cuthbert, and we're going to see what a castle looks like after an attack. We're going to hear about life under siege and the terrifying weapons that could smash down your walls. And we're going to learn all about those terrifying weapons, which we call trebuchets, with Celine. She's one of our specialist siege engineers. And then finally, we're going to answer all of the questions that arrived earlier on by carrier pigeon or by parchment. So, as I said, we are going to be making a shield with Hannah during this. So perhaps you might want to think about asking a grown-up to go and find all of the materials that you're going to need while you watch our first interview. So grown-ups, you're going to be looking for some rectangular paper, like printer paper, or some scissors, a pencil or pen to draw with, and some colouring pencils and pens, and 2 plates, one big one like a dinner plate, and one wee one like a side plate or a saucer. Now, if your grown-ups decide that they want to watch the first interview too, or you want to help look but don't want to miss anything, then don't worry. Hannah will give you a wee bit of time later on to collect the materials to make the shield. But for just now, if you have a rough idea of where to look, then that will really help afterwards. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to go into the wild and unpredictable countryside of 14th century Scotland, and we're going to join our fearless roving reporter as he risks life and limb to speak to Sir Bob the Knight about what he had to think about when he was building a castle that wasn't only just a comfortable place to live in, but could also defend against attacks by any enemy knights, especially his arch nemesis, Sir Fred.
Hello everybody. So, I've been let into the castle, but apparently there may be some enemy forces out there that might be putting this castle under attack soon. So, one of the most important things about going into a battlefield environment is to have the correct armour and equipment on. And as you can see, I'm not protected at all. So I've been to their armoury, and Sir Bob's very kindly lent me some stuff. So this is called an arming cap. I'm going to try and put it on one-handed. But there we go. Oh. And this is nice padding. Oh, it's not going on too well, is it? There we go. So this is nice comfy padding to protect my bonds. But make sure that everybody can still see the printing press sign there to show everybody I'm a non-combatant. I don't get involved in all of that fighting stuff of attacking and defending. I'm just here to report the news, risking life and limb, obviously. And then I've been lent this, and this, they tell me, is called a kettle helm. Yeah, so this is a kettle helm to protect my head from anything falling above, and the bit on the edge, the rim, then takes any stuff and puts it either side of my shoulders to go off. But most importantly, I'm told, when all of the soldiers are out on campaign marching along, Of a night time when they're finished marching, they'll turn the kettle helm over and they'll take the food, put the food into the kettle helm and hang it by the strap over the fire there. Yeah, so it's all nice and toasty. And then when they're done, they can wash it out in the nearest burn. And from here, they can put it back on their bonces. Oh, and that then protects their head, but that's not very comfortable, is it? What's going wrong there? There it is. So on windy conditions, especially on top of this hill, then it's not going to blow off my head. And if it gets hit with anything, that's going to protect me, hopefully. Whew. So, take care, everybody. And yeah, I need to go and find Sir Bob. Sir Bob is the knight that owns this castle. And hopefully he'll give us an exclusive interview for HES News. Okay. When building a castle for defence, what is the first thing you must think about?
Really good question. And the biggest consideration is location. Location, location. That's why we chose here, on a cliff edge, with a great sea behind us and nothing but forests and hills in front of us. But for defensive purposes, we took all of those trees out of view. In fact, we might call it our field of vision. And if we clear it, we'll see them come. But that's not all. Once you're off the beaten track, there's only one road to my castle. Stray from this path, you'll be walking into bogs, into well-placed traps, and across great patches of this beautiful flower called a thistle, where I've heard stories and great tales of this plant deterring enemies and making them turn round. Outside, we have those working the land. They may be spies for anyone conspiring against us. So, we always like to make sure we arrest them and interrogate them in a very friendly manner. But don't believe anything they say. We make sure that we get the truth, one way or another. If they are smart enough to get down the path and past our field of vision, we have archers primed, ready to loose arrow upon them. Stones thrown for the very battlements, tar poured upon them, fresh excrement. And of course, the odd unruly peasant. Keep them in line, or else we use them as ammunition. If they get that close, then they have that to contend with. They also have our moat, a deep trench of putrid, rotten, foul water. The kind of water that you walk into and you come out growing an extra toe. It literally makes you green around the gills. And how do we get around that? A drawbridge. A drawbridge which can easily be raised and keep us safe inside and them outside and away from us.
If Sir Fred's army reach the castle gates, what else do you have in store?
As well as the aforementioned arrows, tar, rocks, dung, peasants. With that being what they've got to contend with, if they could somehow get across the drawbridge before it's been raised, we have a great portcullis, a gate of wood and iron brought down, too heavy for one man to lift, which keeps those unruly attackers outside. But in key locations around my castle, we have arrow slots, little holes in the wall where archers can quite easily look out and almost snipe them. We've been hearing talk of these new siege weapons, ladders, and so to stop that, great stakes, sharpened wooden spikes at the base of our walls. And if they should manage to get ladders in the walls, it's quite easy, we push them off.
If Sir Fred's men manage to get past all that, what then?
If they manage to do that, they're then led into the courtyard, the first area of the castle, where we like to think of it as a kill box. Because the moment they come in, they have to contend with obstacles. Imagine carts being pushed in their way. Imagine all of the pigs, the sheep, the cattle, the chickens being let loose. Now, for them trying to attack, it's not very dignified having a chicken scratch their eyes out. But because this lovely defensive fortification, we have arrows raining in from the walls again, a kill box, as well as my highly trained guard in these formations, schiltrons, long spears, keeping them at bay and keeping them from getting even further into my castle.
Can you tell us about what you're wearing?
My men may not be as well armoured as myself. However, I want them to know, those who dare come to my castle and try and take it, I want to know who they've crossed. That's why I wear my heraldry. I make sure that my family coat of arms is seen. I want them to know who they are crossing. It also helps in the larger battles when you can tell friend and foe apart. It also means that I'm not going to die. I'm worth more to these scum alive. Ransom me off. But should they dare try to cross swords with me, and they will cross swords because the sign of nobility, a man who knows how to use a sword. If they dare cross swords with me, I am protected by this mail, chain links of metal. So I will wear my helmet with pride. The only downfall, very, very thin, narrow eye slots. That field of vision is cut down a lot, but it will protect me. Now, I also need a shield. A shield is great for protection and it's also offensive, but again, people need to see who I am. Now, I would show you my shield, but some of you might not recognize it. So I present. Now this is perceived to be one of the most famous coat of arms in our lands. And if you don't recognise it, we will have to have serious words.
That was good, wasn't it? Sir Bob has definitely shown us how important it is to build a really strong castle. But yeah, I was a bit afraid at the end there, wasn't I? Ooh, I hoped Sir Bob wasn't going to ask me the question. Anyway, remember how important it is to have really colourful and easy to see heraldry, not only to tell our friends who we are, but also for our enemies to know who we are on the battlefield. We're hoping that our enemies won't kill us in a battle, but if they do capture us, they could ransom us or sell us back to our families. Our heraldry is our bling or our advertising. It gets us seen out there, which is another reason why we use really bright colours and animals or objects that say something about our family. The blingier, the better, that's what we say. Sometimes people even switch sides during a battle, and we then have to rely on our squires to tell us who's who, as that's one of the things they have to learn about everyone's heraldry or coat of arms. So now we're going to join Hannah, who's going to teach you how to make your very own shield. See if you can see Sir Bob's heraldry that his surcoat was showing during your armourer training. Good luck.
Hello, my name's Hannah and I'm going to show you how to make your own heraldic shield. I've got a couple here that I've made. This one I made by collaging. I've stuck different coloured paper and tape and feathers onto it. And this one I made by drawing some pictures. And all these pictures reflect me and my personality and my hobbies. Now before we get started, let's take a look at some heraldic shields from history. These shield designs show different coats of arms, special combinations of colours, patterns and symbols that made up the personal badge of a member of the nobility. It's been suggested that it was called a coat because knights used their heraldry to decorate the surcoats that they wore on top of their armour. The heraldic symbols and colours would help people to recognise them during a battle when everyone was wearing armour and it was really hard to tell who was who. Sometimes the symbols in heraldry had special meanings, particularly the animals. So a lion meant bravery, a dog meant faithfulness, a deer meant wisdom or long life. Using a coat of arms to identify people still happens today. So you might see one on a crest for a football team, maybe on a school uniform. The knights used their coat of arms to tell the world who they were. So have a think about what colours and what symbols are you going to choose to tell the world who you are. Next I'm going to show you some of the materials you might use for making your shield. And then I'm going to give you 30 seconds to go and collect everything. For the main part of your shield, you're going to need 5 things. A rectangular sheet of paper, Ideally it'll be plain and A4 size. If you haven't got that, you could try using an old letter, a double page from a magazine. You'll also need some scissors, something to draw with, and finally you'll need 2 round objects of different sizes. I recommend a dinner plate and a side plate. If you haven't got those, then something of a similar size to those. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to go and collect everything. Ready, steady, go! Hi folks, did you make it back in time? Next I'm going to show you how to make this basic shield shape. So follow along and we'll do this together. We're going to start with a piece of paper and we're going to start by folding it in half. To do that, we want to be as neat as we possibly can. I'm going to line up my corners. And now I'm happy that I've got both of those corners matched up. I'm using one hand to hold it in place and I'll use my other hand to make this crease. Go ahead and fold your piece of paper in half. Once we fold it in half in one direction, we're going to fold it in half again. So this way now. How are we doing, folks? Have we all got our folds? If so, you're going to open it up. So we've got that lovely cross shape in the middle. We can see it taking shape there. And next, we're going to fold it in half again along this middle line here. Let me show you. We want to have a really, really long rectangle. Go ahead and do that. So next we're going to make use of our plates. We're going to start off with the smaller one, and this is going to make the lovely curve at the top of the shield here. What we're going to do is we're going to take one of these short edges, we're going to place our plate on it. I've turned mine upside down so that it sits nicely on top of my workbench, and I'm positioning it so we can just see a tiny bit of the corners of the paper on either side there. And once your plate's in position, you're going to take your pencil and we're going to draw a curve along there. Once you've got your curve, it's time to get your scissors out, and we're just going to cut off that curve now, keeping your paper folded over as it is. No need to unfold it for this bit. Okay, once you've cut off that curve, it's time to make use of our large plate, and we're going to be using this to get that curve down at the bottom of the shield there. So it's really important for this bit that we look where the folded over part of our paper is. Okay, so there's my fold and there's my open edge. What I'm wanting to do is I'm again turning my plate over and placing it onto my paper, and I want to make sure that I'm just about touching the corner where my fold is. And over here, what I want to do is I want to make sure this part of my plate touches the edge of the paper there. Can you all see that? So we've got a lovely curve going on here. And again, we're taking our pencil and we're going to draw around the plate. I only need to go as far as where it meets here. I don't need to go all the way around because it's just that corner that we're trying to get. How are you all doing at home? Have you managed to draw your corner there? If so, you're going to take your scissors, again keeping your paper folded in half, and we'll cut off the corner. How are you all doing? The moment of truth. Let's open it up and see whether we got our shield shape. Ta-da! Once you've made your basic shield shape, have a think about what you're going to do with it then. Maybe you'll glue it onto a piece of cardboard to strengthen it. Maybe you'll collage onto it. Maybe you'll draw onto it. And then your final thing is to think about where you're going to display it. What are you going to do with your shield? Are you going to stick it on the back of your bedroom door? Or maybe you want to be a knight and you want to play with your shield, in which case I've stuck a little bit of cardboard onto the back of this one to make myself a handle. Have fun making your shields. Cheerio now.
Oh, that was great. Did you manage to get your shield done? I hope so. Yay. Well, don't worry if you didn't get all of that or you ran out of time to make that perfect shield. After the questions at the end of this, we'll be reminding you where to find recordings of this activity and lots of others too. Okay, so we've already seen how to build a castle to defend against attack. So have you got any ideas about how you would go about trying to get into a really strongly defended castle like Sir Bob's? Do you think the best thing we could do would be to ask an expert who's doing just that? That's a great idea. So now we go back into the field into very, very dangerous conditions as our roving reporter joins the fearless Sir Fred, who's taking his men's lives into his own hands with the very serious business of mounting an attack on the castle of his biggest enemy, Sir Bob.
Hello again, everybody. We're out about again on our roving HCS Scriptorium reporter slot, and the word on the track is that this man behind me that we've stumbled across is none other than the brave Sir Fred himself, arch nemesis of Sir Bob that you met earlier. It looks like Sir Fred and his army are planning to launch an attack against Sir Bob's castle, so before that gets too far in the way, we'll try and secure another exclusive interview, this time from Sir Fred, before things heat up too much. Come on. Just mind your step, it's really undergrowth. Oh.
What's your plan of attack for Sir Bob's castle?
So, you'll see that we're right on the tree line here. Beyond here, nothing. Bob has cut down every single tree around here for miles. That means we've got nowhere to hide. One of my cousins suggested that we dress up as cows at the middle of the night and walk up to the castle mooing. And then one of his brothers decided that we should walk up to the castle, knock on the gate, and just ask for the castle over. They both got 100 lashes for those stupid suggestions. However, my scouts have discovered that along the main path towards the castle, Bob's booby-trapped everywhere around it. We could clear it out, we could get rid of the shrubs and thistles and the caltrops. However, one of my disgruntled spies inside the castle says that there's a goat path going around the back. It's a bit treacherous, a bit sneaky, but it means that we can get up to the castle completely undetected. Failing that, our said disgruntled peasant inside, when we give the signal, is going to throw wide open those gates and we can walk in like we've already owned the place. Assuming they're still alive, that is. I guess we're in for the long run. Around about here, there's a spring that leads to a well inside that castle. That's where he's getting his fresh water from. We've flavoured that well with a couple of dead sheep, which means that either his spirit or his body is going to break first. Whichever happens, we don't care. But if we can't sneak up, or that goat path is too treacherous, or the inside help have been found out and murdered, the only option that we've got left is all-out attack. When stealth and subterfuge fail, strength wins the day.
How will you deal with Sir Bob's many defences?
You see on the front of that castle, big mighty drawbridge. That coward has lifted it up so we can hide behind it. No problem for us. We can throw some metal hooks over the top of that and pull it down. Strength of 100 or 200 men, that thing will fall down like nothing. Around the side of the castle, there's a big door there, braced steel. Too heavy for us to kick in, and no space for us to stick some hooks over the top of it. But a battering ram with tarps and shields all over it to protect us from any of that missiles can come down. We'll break that door open as fast as you can say, "Honey, I'm home." Of course, the archers in the wall are going to give us no end of trouble. So we're going to dig trenches all around the castle so that we can keep our archers and slingers nice and close. Keep the pressure on them always and constantly. They might run out of arrows. They're not going to run out of ideas. They'll throw anything down. Rocks, other peasants, poo. Now, there's a moat going around the castle. There's also a river as well. With that hut up there, and none of those like it, we're going to trash them, take the doors, take the floorboards out of them, and then use them as temporary bridges to get over that river. If we can't drain the moat, we can use them to get over the moat as well. If we could drain the moat, we can use nice big tall siege towers. They will keep us safe when we're climbing up. Until we get to the top, we can flood in and wipe them out. If we can't, then unfortunately we'll have to use flimsier ladders. Trouble is, Bob's thought ahead of that one and put wooden stakes all around the bottom of the castle. Key point there, they're wooden. They can either be broken or set on fire. Bit of a problem in the way, but yeah, nothing we can't deal with. Now, though a much safer way to get into the castle would be through their sea gate. A massive gate on the edge of the cliff where their supply ships get in and come out. It also means that he can escape from there. If we can't get in, we'll make sure nothing else can get in. So we'll blockade it with our own ships. If supplies can't get in, he can't get out.
You've reached the portcullis. How will you break through?
Right, there is a big portcullis there. It's heavy, it's hard, but it's not impenetrable. We get up to it, and while our archers are keeping the strength on those archers up on the walls, we lever it up a little bit, wedge it, lever, wedge, and keep doing that until we get about 1 meter, 2 meters off of the ground. Enough for our men to flood in there. When they're in there, we destroy everything. We kill everyone. We burn everything. We raze it to the ground.
Which are the most important pieces of armour used for attack?
You're wearing a fantastic example on your head. The kettle helm. The shape of that deflects anything. Be it swords, axes, arrows, poo. Gets them deflected all the way out of harm's way. Also, my men are equipped with these buckler shields. Unlike the heater shields that Bob and his men use, these are smaller, lighter, more maneuverable, and when you're not using them, they can clip onto your belt and get out of the way. I'm also wearing what's called a leather brigandine. Unlike the chain, which is clunky, sure it's tougher, but it's heavy. Leather is flexible, light, and I can move around with it. Plus, as you can see, it's covered in little metal plates, which give me even more protection. Also means that any of those hot liquids that they throw off the walls will just splash off them like water off a duck's back. And then, of course, we have their weaponry. I don't use any of those frou-frou swords or maces or anything like that. I prefer a stout axe. It's heavy, it gets the job done, no nonsense. It can split a man's head like a ripe tomato. And if there needs be, it can also be used to chop wood, or the odd trader's neck.
You've tried to get into the castle and failed. What else can be done?
Wait, we have the advantage. They're stuck inside there. We've got trenches all around covered in archers. We've got ships in the dock. We've got supplies coming in. We've got the opportunity to kick back and relax. Their supplies will run out. Their water is poisoned. Eventually, the food's going to run out, the water's going to run out, their morale's going to break, they're going to throw Bob over the wall, and they're going to surrender. Or they're going to starve to death. Either way, we win.
Well, that was a bit scary, wasn't it? So remember, stay tuned to the end to find out how to watch that interview again, just in case you missed any of it like I did because you were hiding behind the sofa due to how dangerous it was. Oh. Okay, so whether you're going to be attacking or defending a castle or just taking part in the King's Tournament, one thing you need to be is ready for anything. That means having all of your armour and weapons ready that Sir Bob and Sir Fred talked about. It also means that you should be really, really well trained from when you're very young, learning all of the skills needed to be a knight. That means being fit, learning how to fight and ride a horse, and most importantly, practicing these skills every day so that you're ready when your lord calls you up to do battle. So let's join two of our junior knights in training as they put us through our paces to get us fighting fit for defending the castle during a battle, or for a tournament in more peaceful times.
Hello, knights in training. Find a space where you're not going to bump into anything, or anyone. First up, stretch your hands to the sky to show us how high your castle is. How tall can you make yourself? And now stretch your hands out to the side to show us how wide your castle is. Yeah, pretty big. Look one way. Oh no, enemy soldiers approaching. Look the other way. Oh no, even more! The castle is under attack. Shake your wrists. What are we going to do? Quick! Let's run up all the stairs to check the archers are in position to defend the castle. Ah! There's one more flight of stairs to get right up to the battlements at the top of the castle. Made it! Look, an archer's about to fire arrows on our enemies. Stand up tall, draw back your bow and release. Change hands and fire another arrow. The attackers have run away. Phew! Now run back down the castle stairs. The Lord has decided to hold a jousting tournament to celebrate our success in defending the castle. Reach down low and put your chainmail on. It's so heavy! And your helmet. It's heavy too. Now for your gauntlets. They'll protect your hands. And don't forget your shield! Hop on your horse and gallop with high horse knees towards your opponent. Now lunge forward with your lance, which is like a big stick. Missed. Let's try again on the other side. Success! Do your best celebration moves. Time to take off your heavy helmet and put it on the floor. Now off comes your chainmail. And your gauntlets and shield too. Let's have a good wriggle to shake off all your aches and pains from the jousting tournament. Roll your shoulders back a few times. They ache from the weight of your armour. And then roll them forwards. Now tilt your ear towards your shoulder and slowly roll your head down and around to the other side. Let's go back to the other side, nice and slowly. Ooh, that feels better. One last thing, give yourself a nice relaxing head massage to sort out your flat helmet hair. Well done, you're fighting fit. Keep up your training and see you next time.
I don't know about you guys, but I am out of puff and out of shape. Did you wriggle and sort out all those aches and pains? I think I've got quite a bit of wriggling to do, haven't I? Well, hopefully, though, you're all now ready to go into battle. Just like before, if you want to watch it again tomorrow, the next day, or any day after that to keep up your practice, we'll be letting you know where to find the recording at the end of this event. Okay, so now we're moving on to talk about Gaelic. Did you know that Gaelic has been spoken in Scotland for over 1,500 years? That's a mega long time, isn't it? It was also spoken by most of Scotland's kings and heard in Edinburgh, Stirling and Urquhart Castle, to name a few. With that in mind, up next we've got some Gaelic phrases you can learn, so that the next time you're in a castle, you can shout out like Caniuch MacAlpine to defend your castle in Gaelic.
Hamachastal, Larcher. Hamachastal, Larcher. Hamachastal, Larcher. Hamachastal, Larcher.
Hamachastal, for Yusi. Ha Mochashjal for Yusi. Ha Mochashjal for Yusi. Ha Mochashjal for Yusi. Ha Mochashjal Anum Kunnerst. Ha Mochashjal Anum Kunnerst. Ha Mochashjal Anum Kunnerst. Ha Mochashjal Anum Kunnerst.
Ha Machashjal Savalcha. Ha Machashjal Savalcha. Ha Machashjal Savalcha. Ha Machashjal Savalcha.
Which one was your favourite? I definitely preferred the Gaelic for "My castle is safe." Yeah, and I'm sure Sir Bob would as well. Okay, so we've heard about some of the armour and weapons worn by the attacking and the defending soldiers. A really important reason for having the best armour you could afford to buy or to have made is to protect you from arrows loosed by enemy archers. Someone who knows a lot about bows and arrows is Cuthbert of Dumbarton. Usually he's a hunter in the service of the chief of Clan MacDonald, but when his castle is attacked, he has a different job. So let's join him now to hear what he has to say about what it's like living in the castle and the life of a hunter.
Good day to you. I am Cuthbert of Dumbarton, archer to the clan chief of the MacDonalds of Clan Ranald. Now, like many men living within the castle walls, I have two jobs. I am a hunter. I hunt a wild deer and boar for the clan chief's dinner, but in times of war I can be an attacker or a defender of a castle. This is my weapon then, the longbow, made from ash or yew. Many people living in the castle would have two jobs. For instance, the blacksmith. Now, in times of peace he would make hinges and locks for the castle doors, but then when war would break out he would make things like weapons for the men to fight with and arrowheads for me to use. Now, there are many different kinds of arrows. For instance, this is a hunting arrow, a simple shape. But in times of war, we'd often use different kinds of arrows. This one here is called a bodkin. It is very thin. The reason it's so thin is used for this stuff. Mail. Soldiers would cover themselves in this to protect them from the swords and axes. But a good archer using a bodkin arrow could fire and it would pass right through the links of the chainmail vest. So a good archer could kill any man upon the field if he had the proper arrows. But there is one other arrow I must show you, a particularly nasty one. This one here is called a swallowtail. Oh, you didn't want to be hit by this, for once it goes in, it's very hard to get it out. Now, as an archer on the battlefield, I do not have much protection. I wear a padded or quilted coat. I do have one other weapon with me, however, my dirk. Now, I made this one myself. A broken piece of sword I found upon the battlefield, and the handle, well, it's made from a deer's antler. Well, I cannot stand here chatting to you all day. The clan chief is expecting venison for his dinner, and I have not yet been hunting, so I must be on my way. Good day to you, good folks.
Whew, well, let's hope the Lord got his venison for his dinner. Yeah, let's hope Cuthbert was successful. Okay, now you're probably wondering, did Sir Fred manage to get into Sir Bob's castle? And if so, what happened next? Did he leave the castle standing, or did he destroy it as promised? Well, let's go back to Sir Bob's castle with the roving reporter and find out what happened to all of them after Sir Fred's interview.
Bob! Where are you? Get on you, you coward! I'm gonna get you! That's just as soon as I get over this wall!
Coward! Coward! There's a man hiding in a bush!
Hello everybody. siege is underway, the wind is howling, and it's just chaos in here. People are running for their lives, so we'll get back to you afterwards. Stay safe, everyone. Hope you're not in this castle with us. This is Dave, risking life and limb for HES News. Incoming!
Burn it! Raze it to the ground!
So, hello everybody. Here we are in the ruins of Sir Bob's castle. Looks like Sir Fred, true to his word, managed to not only get across the moat and raise the portcullis and batter down the main door, but he got in and he promised, didn't he? He promised that he would raise the castle to the ground, which is what he appears to have done. There's destruction all over the place. He's got in and can't see any of the castle's staff or the inhabitants, the people that used to live here. So he may have been true to his word as well and executed everybody. Hopefully some people got out into the surrounding lands and managed to escape to freedom, and these peasants, hopefully they'll be absorbed in by the next local lords. I don't know what Sir Fred's thinking, because he could have taken this castle and kept it for himself, but he's obviously chosen not to. So he's probably a very wealthy knight that's got lots of castles, so many to choose from. He just wanted Sir Bob not to have his castle, which sounds a bit mean, doesn't it? Okay, so take care everybody. Hope you're never involved in a castle siege, because this could be the aftermath. And I'm going to hand us back now to the scriptorium. So this is Dave, the roving reporter for HES News, signing out.
Phew! I am really glad that I had my printing press sign on to show everyone that I wasn't involved in attacking or defending the castle. I'm also really glad that Sir Bob's armourer lent me this kettle helm, especially for when bits of the castle were falling down around me. I went to give it back to the armoury, but it wasn't there anymore. Sort of result. So the remains of the castle are showing you an attack where they did manage to get in. But, excuse me, what if running through the field of vision that Sir Bob talked about, crossing the moat, pulling down the drawbridge, using the battering ram while being attacked from above by archers like Cuthbert, trying to scale the ladders to get to the top of the wall without having any oil, rocks or peasants dropped on you, didn't work? Well, there was another option. You could try and knock down the walls using mighty war engines that could hurl huge boulders at the castle walls to try and smash your way through. While you're waiting for your engineers to use their engines to make a hole big enough for you to get your army through, you would surround the castle to make sure that nothing and no one could get in or out of the castle, like Sir Fred did. This is called a siege. Now, life was very hard for the people that lived in a castle during the siege. The men would all be sent to stand on the walls to defend the castle, even if they hadn't done the training that you've done. All day and night, the attacking army would be hurling huge boulders at your castle buildings and walls to try and get in as quickly as possible. This is because after 40 days of sieging, the leader of the attacking force, sometimes a king, would have to start paying their knights money for all of the men and equipment that the knights had brought with them. They'd also be paying mercenaries, who are soldiers that fight for money, from day one. So they wanted to try and keep it as cheap as possible, you know? Now, the ladies and children would usually be trying to keep as safe as possible within the strongest buildings in the castle, working really hard to feed the soldiers and help with the injured if anybody was hurt. If the siege went on for a long time, then people would become really, really hungry as their supplies started to run low. They might even get to the stage where they were eating the leather soles off their shoes and drinking rainwater if their water supply had been poisoned, like Sir Fred did to Sir Bob's. But sometimes laying siege didn't work, no matter how long you waited, so you might have to terrify the defenders to surrender. And one example of that happened over 700 years ago when King Edward I invaded Scotland. As well as bringing lots of horses, knights and soldiers with him, he also brought lots of siege engines. 3 types of siege engines that he brought with him were called mangonels, catapults and trebuchets. And one of these trebuchets that Edward brought with him in 1304 was really, really huge. Its name was Warwolf. To build Warwolf and some other siege engines, Edward ordered entire sections of oak and beech tree forest to be cut down, and the lead roofs to be removed and melted down from the churches in St Andrews and Perth, as well as the Abbey Church at Dunfermline. In fact, Warwolf was so big, we think it took 30 horse-drawn wagons to transport it from place to place because of all of its bits and pieces when it wasn't built. That's because when it was built, it's estimated that Warwolf could throw huge boulders over 200 meters, and for the older people, that's 660 feet, or for all of you sports people out there, the length of 2 football pitches, at a speed of over 120 miles per hour, or 200 kilometers an hour if you're watching from elsewhere, to smash down anything in its path. When the king turned up with his army and laid siege to Stirling Castle, the people inside were very, very scared. They got even more scared when they saw Warwolf, and even before it was fully built, they sent a group of people from the castle saying, "We surrender!" But King Edward had come a long way and spent a lot of money building his new favourite toy, and wanted to test it out once it was fully built. So he sent the people back into the castle without giving them a chance to surrender, going, "No!" Eventually, Warwolf was built, and Edward got to play with it by hurling some rocks into the walls of Stirling Castle, demolishing a section of it over 4 days of bombardment. 4 days, imagine. Once he'd had his fun, Edward let the people in the castle go, even though he had promised to execute everyone like Sir Fred did. Now, how many people do you think it took to make Warwolf? Well, some sources say that Edward ordered 5 master carpenters to build it, and they needed a crew of 49 labourers to work on building it with them. 54 people. And how long do you think it took to build? Just have a guess. Well, if you said 3 months, then you're right. 3 months. I bet that didn't make the people living in the castle very happy watching that terrifying engine being built every day for 3 months in front of them. This is another aspect of siege warfare called psychological warfare, trying to force a quick surrender by making people very, very afraid. Do you think you could make a trebuchet? We think you can, though the one you make might not be quite as big as Warwolf, otherwise it wouldn't fit in your house. We're going across now to the Glasgow Science Centre, where Celine is going to tell us all about the science behind building a trebuchet. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Celine from Glasgow Science Centre, and our friends at Historic Environment Scotland have asked us to explain the science behind trebuchets. This is a model of a trebuchet which I made following the instructions provided by Historic Environment Scotland, which you can build yourself following the link. A trebuchet is a siege engine that uses a swinging arm to throw an object or a projectile towards a target. It is similar to a catapult in that it can launch objects a very far distance. However, a trebuchet does work in a slightly different way, which we will look at in this video. To explore the science of trebuchets, we must begin by looking at levers. We can do this by looking at a type of lever, a seesaw. A seesaw has 2 seats on either end, with a balancing point in the middle known as the fulcrum. With 2 people on either end, the seesaw begins to move depending on weight. The heavier weight falls to the bottom, with the lighter weight being pushed up in the air. Have you ever been on a seesaw where the other person has pushed all of their weight down really hard and fast and you bounce off your seat? That is like a trebuchet. However, there are some differences between the seesaw and the trebuchet that makes the trebuchet much more powerful. The first difference is the placement of the balancing point. On a seesaw, it is in the middle, but on a trebuchet, it is much closer to the counterweight. This means that when the counterweight drops only a little bit, the throwing arm and projectile move a lot. When the trebuchet fires, the sling whips around the throwing arm. This allows the sling to actually become an extension of the throwing arm, meaning that the projectile has an even greater distance to travel, adding even more speed. Another difference is the weight. On a seesaw, the people on either end weigh roughly the same, but on a trebuchet, the counterweight is much, much heavier than its projectile. Imagine if a mouse and an elephant were trying to play on a seesaw. As soon as the elephant would sit down, the mouse would fly up very fast. This is what happens on a trebuchet. The extremely heavy counterweight helps get the lighter projectile moving really fast. So let's have a look at those parts of the trebuchet again. The throwing arm of the trebuchet is a lever, and the rod in the middle is a balancing point or fulcrum. The counterweight pulls down, which throws the projectile inside the sling very far and very fast. A trebuchet works by using human energy to lift up the counterweight. By lifting things up, we can store energy in the form of gravitational potential energy. A trebuchet's counterweight is an energy store. When the counterweight is released, the energy is converted from gravitational potential energy into kinetic energy or movement energy, and the sling and projectile swing in an arc. As the sling nears a vertical position, the projectile is released. So let's have a look at this science in action. How cool was that? We managed to get our projectile to launch out of our trebuchet. Now, if you're trying this at home, it can be a little bit tricky to get the trebuchet to work properly. If you're having issues, you can try changing the weight of the counterweight, changing the length of the sling, or even changing the projectile. I had to try a few different things to be able to get our trebuchet to work as well as it did there. You may be wondering, what were trebuchets actually used for? Trebuchets are a siege engine that were used as one of the most feared weapons, mainly during the Middle Ages, to hurl heavy objects to smash down city walls or attack castles. It is thought that the trebuchet originated from 4th century BC China. They did take many centuries to become common in European warfare. However, they were eventually used all over the world, including Scotland. Urquhart Castle on Loch Ness is actually home to a full-size working model of a trebuchet which was built in 1998. This trebuchet was successful in hurling a boulder over 200 yards at a speed of 126 miles per hour. Now, there is no evidence to say that Urquhart Castle was ever attacked by a trebuchet, but we do know that Stirling Castle and Carlaverock Castle were. Few new trebuchets are built these days. However, the same concepts that guided the construction of trebuchets still shapes the world around us. Counterweight levers are used in the cranes that build our tallest skyscrapers. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to check out Historic Environment Scotland's page where you can build your very own trebuchet. Have fun and good luck.
So huge thanks to Celine at the Glasgow Science Centre for showing us how to make a trebuchet. Can you think of any castles that you've been to or that you're planning to go to in the future that you'd like to try and knock down with your trebuchet when it's made? Any? And even bigger thanks to all of you that sent in your questions by carrier pigeon or through the chain mail to the scriptorium. We've had some really good questions which have had our team of cultural scribes and resourceful minstrels pondering over for quite a few days as they search through the parchments, psalters or scrolls looking for answers. So our first question is by Alex, age 7, and it's a great question. What kind of metal is your armor made from? Well, Alex, chainmail was made of iron rings. Basic plate armor was made of iron or steel, but very expensive armor might be decorated by being etched or gilded with precious metals like gold. Sometimes the armorers would superheat your new armor to about 250 degrees to create different colored effects, like turning it slightly blue, for example. Thank you. Great question, Alex. The next one is from Leo, age 9. How do you cope with wearing such heavy armor? Well, as knights, we are all fit and really strong from long years of training, like you were doing earlier, and fighting in battles. The armour weighs about 30 kilos, which is just over 4.5 stone, which sounds very heavy, but once you're wearing it, the weight is spread out evenly over your shoulders so that your whole body is taking the weight. The downside to the armour, though, is it's not like modern clothes, which are breathable. So you were at risk of heat exhaustion as the air couldn't get in and you might faint. So great question, Lou. Imagine fainting during a battle. That wouldn't be good, would it? So Vashti has written an amazing question. She's age 5 and she says, can you be a queen if you want to be a queen? Well, you could become a queen either by inheriting the throne like Mary, Queen of Scots, or by marrying a king. To do this, it helped to be a member of the nobility and very, very rich. Excuse me. Kings married to create alliances, often with foreign countries, like James IV when he married Margaret Tudor of England in 1503. They also wanted a dowry, which is the money that the bride's family have to pay to the king when they get married. Mary, Queen of Scots, became queen in 1542 because she was the James V's only legitimate, which means legally accepted, living child. So she had no brothers who could have legally become king instead. So this next question, great question, sorry Vashti, thank you. This next question from Julia, who hasn't put her age in quite right, is what's a knight's favourite dessert? Well, knights and other people loved expensive food brought in from other countries, as you can see. For example, at David II's wedding to Joan of England in 1328, lots of almonds, sugar, and food colouring was imported, probably from Asia. Medieval people also used to honey sweeten food, and they ate pies and tarts containing fruit like apples. So the honey was a way of doing it before we discovered sugar. So, Cora, age 7, writes in, how did you become a knight and what do you do all day? Well, if you're Dennis, not very much, but the rest of us, boys born into the nobility were expected to become knights when they grew up. So from a young age, they trained for their future job. Around about the same time as learning how to walk, you would learn how to ride a horse. In other languages, the word for knight means horse rider. So, for example, chevalier in French and Ritter in German. Later in childhood, you would serve as a squire in a great household as an apprenticeship to an existing knight, who may or may not have been part of your family. At this point, you would learn how to fight with lots of different weapons, and once you were older and more experienced, you would be dubbed a knight. Sometimes this happened at important occasions, such as a crowning of a king, or it could be just before a battle. As a new knight, you swore an oath to be loyal to the Christian religion and to your king. Now, what do I do all day? Well, when I was a full-time knight, my main duty was to wage war when I needed to, or was told to by my king. However, we weren't always at war, but we were always busy. We would hold high-status posts in royal or noble households, such as Master of the Stables, for example. We also held roles in the local and national government, and sometimes even in international diplomacy, talking to other kings and queens on behalf of our king or queen. I didn't enjoy that as much as training in tournaments, to be honest. We had to stay really fit because wars could start really quickly. So we stayed fit by taking part in tournaments, which would usually be jousting or the melee, which is a pretend or mock battle. When we were at war, though, we owed the king military service, and if we were called up, we would have to bring our own retinues, which means that we would supply knights and horses and armour and weapons to the war effort, which, being made a knight, very, very expensive. But thank you, Cora. Great questions there as well. So now we've got a question from Max, age 7. How many people do you usually have in an army? Great. All these amazing questions from all of you. Thank you. Well, during the time of King Robert the Bruce and Sir William Wallace, there are no accounts that we can trust telling us the size of Scottish armies. That's because we have no surviving pay accounts or other administrative records, and chronicle accounts tended to focus more on specific high-status men like Bruce and Wallace rather than armies as a whole. But English armies left better records. So, for example, the English King Edward I had about 25,700 men at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298, which was a huge army, while the Scottish army would have been smaller. Even later on in time, the sources are still unreliable. So, for example, for Flodden in 1513, lots of different estimates were given by people from that time. Historians, though, have estimated the Scottish army to be around 30,000 men, with the English one at about 26,000 men. These are big battles, though, so smaller engagements like Sir Bob and Sir Fred and sieges would have had far fewer men, especially if the king had to pay for everybody, because he doesn't want to pay that much. So, great question. Thank you, Max. Okay, and we've got another question here from Lochy. There's two questions merged into one. Age 12. Lochy asks, what happens when you're wearing your armour and you need the toilet? And where do you get your armour fixed after a battle? Right, well, let's deal with the first one. We could quite easily go to the toilet in our chainmail armour, but it was much more difficult when we started using plate armour around the mid-1400s or 15th century. Armourers had to be really creative as well as practical and eventually created chainmail breeches called trebuchets to protect the gaps between the plates. Once a knight had on his brayette and then put his plate armour on top, well, there really was no going to the toilet. Unless, well, I'll leave it up to you to work it out. But I'll just say, after a battle, this was one of the squire's least favourite jobs when looking after his lord's armour. The squire would also have to take any dented or broken armour to an armourer. Some armourers were specialists in making both metal armour and the textile components, as well as traders in armour. If it was just a basic fix, though, a metalworking armourer could carry out repairs, or a general blacksmith would do, to hammer plate back into shape if there were no armour specialists around. But very, very cool questions. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Lochy, and everybody else that sent in these questions. That really got our guys having to think about it and set through the records. So, after all of that, who thinks that they'd like to be one of Sir Bob's young knights defending the castle? Or would you prefer to be one of Sir Fred's knights attacking the castle? Perhaps you prefer to be an archer like Cuthbert, or make shields and trebuchets like Hannah and Celine. Or would you all like to one day work for HES News as a roving reporter or scriptorium presenter? If you do want to become a roving reporter, just remember that battlefield could be a very dangerous place, and you will have to be very brave and go out and interview the knights, especially if they're smelly. Ooh. Well, that brings us almost to the end of today's Capture the Castle event. A huge, huge thank you from every one of us here at Historic Environment Scotland for joining us live today. We really appreciate your time and hope that you've enjoyed watching it as much as we've enjoyed putting it on. If you do want to watch it again or any other recordings of virtual events you may have missed, you can find recordings on Historic Environment Scotland's YouTube or Facebook channels. And if you'd like more projects for all of the family to get creative with at home, then head over to www.historicenvironment.scot/learn and click on any of the buttons there for some of these things to do, including make a mini catapult, make gauntlets. There are also things to make to do with your favorite medieval job, including become a soap mason, bake some Mary Queen of Scots shortbread, and learn about building things with iron by making a cast out of chocolate. Yum-ers! That just looks stunning, doesn't it? Yeah, oh yeah, that looks good. Oh, it's got my stomach going. And there's lots more to see and do online. Oh, hold on, breaking news. Breaking news, yep. Okay, this is the production on Friday the 30th of April. We're really excited to announce that we'll be opening the gates to many castles and lowering the drawbridges once more. 30th of April. Hundreds of open-air, free-to-access sites are ready for you to explore. And now, oh, hold on, coming in. Oh, wow. And now advance tickets for many of our staff sites can now be pre-booked at restarthistory.scot. Okay, that's just, yeah, I'm telling them. Yeah, thank you. Honestly, production. Yeah, that's restarthistory.scot. You can book in. It's really important to remember that you must book in advance if you want to visit any of our staff sites. Don't just pitch up on the day. And please don't forget to follow government guidance when traveling and to stay safe, folks. So this is Dave and the HES News team, everybody behind the scenes as well, signing off, saying a huge thank you and goodbye. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.